I felt like I was in a war zone with the explosions, the smell of smoke, the smell of burning flesh, people screaming.
It was the single most deadly automobile accident in American history. 99 vehicles, most of them destroyed. 12 people died.
Identifiable?
More than 50 were injured.
Total destruction. If I hadn't been there and I witnessed it, I don't believe I could have believed it.
The accident happened along a 3-mile stretch of highway long known for dense, thick fog. But what was causing the fog? The victims and their families wanted answers. The accident occurred on Interstate 75 in Tennessee, on a portion of highway between Chattanooga and Knoxville. The highway was constructed through a valley which lies between the Cumberland and Great Smoky Mountains. From the time the highway first opened back in 1973, there had been numerous multi-vehicle chain reaction accidents in the same 3-mile section. The first occurred just 4 months after the highway opened. 3 people died in a 17-car pileup. 10 were injured. Just 1 month later, there was a 9-car accident. Although there were no deaths, 9 were injured. During the first 6 years the highway was open, there was an average of 1 multi-car accident each year. One of the largest was in November of 1978, involving more than 60 vehicles. 6 people were killed, nearly 100 injured. All of the accidents had one thing in common: the sudden appearance of a dense, thick fog, reducing visibility to near zero. Tennessee State Highway officials responded by installing fog warning lights to warn drivers when fog was in the area. Highway patrol officers were posted to stand watch every morning along the fog-prone area to make sure drivers slowed down when the fog warning lights were activated. The combination of these 2 systems worked. For 11 years, there were no major accidents.
From your knees down, you can't see anything but white.
As I rolled down the window, I could hear the cars just crashing into each other, one after another.
You could hear people around you screaming for help, and it kind of a helpless feeling because you really couldn't do anything about it because you didn't know where they were. All you could do was hear.
A motorhome hit the front end of my truck after just seconds after I had gotten out, and then vehicles started hitting the back of it. I'll never forget hearing one, and he hit other cars and just knocked them out of the way like there were nothing, and came and crashed just to the right of that motorhome. The explosion was such that it almost knocked me down.
Mike Curtis pulled this 14-year-old boy out of the motorhome, then rescued the boy's mother.
And I turned and went back to get her husband. And all I could see was fire. I could smell hair burning. His coat came off burning in my hands. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to witness. The most helpless feeling I've ever had.
The man burned to death. 12 people were killed, 56 others injured, making it the largest vehicular accident in American history. These pictures were taken shortly after the accident, when most of the fog had dissipated.
The vehicles that I saw, I don't even know if you could classify them as vehicles. What normally was a pickup truck was 3 foot in length, body stood in it.
After 11 years without a serious accident, the killer fog had struck again. But why? The families of the dead and injured demanded answers. They wanted to know what caused the dense, thick fog on December 11th, 1990. On December 11th, 1990, 30-year-old Craig Piper was driving his tractor-trailer south on Interstate 75, on his way to visit his mother for the holidays. When he entered the thick, dense fog, visibility was near zero. Within seconds, he crashed.
The flames were extremely tense, and I knew there wasn't any way I could get him out. And I had to stand there and watch this man burn in his vehicle. There wasn't really anything I could do. The flames were too big. I didn't have a fire extinguisher. I just had to stand there and watch this man burn alive.
Craig Piper's mother is in low-lying areas. The valley through which Interstate 75 passes is perfect for the formation of natural fog. But the fog described by the accident victims was extremely thick and dense. Was the fog on the day of the accident naturally produced, or was it caused by one or more of the local industries nearby? When Doug Fees began his investigation, he found a study commissioned by the state of Tennessee 12 years earlier, shortly after the 62 vehicle accident which killed 6 people and injured 100 more. The study was done by this man, Professor Wayne Davis, an expert in environmental engineering at the University of Tennessee. Davis did not have the resources to recreate the exact weather conditions on the day of the accident in 1978. So he went up in an airplane on 3 separate days when fog was in the area to make a visual inspection.
On those 3 days, there was some amount of river fog, although it was relatively small. On all 3 days, there was a very noticeable emission of fog-related water vapor from the Bowater facility.
The Bowater Paper Company is located 3 miles to the east of the interstate highway. It is the largest producer of newsprint in North America and releases large quantities of water vapor into the atmosphere 24 hours a day as part of the manufacturing process. Wayne Davis recommended that the state of Tennessee conduct a more detailed study in order to understand the cause of the fogging conditions. The state decided not to fund a more detailed study, but elected to install a fog warning system along the highway and posted state troopers to patrol the fog-prone stretch of highway each and every morning.
If there were fog conditions in the area, then a trooper would go to that sign and manually turn the lights on to signify that fogging conditions were present.
For 11 years, the system worked. Between 1979 and 1990, there were no serious multi-vehicle accidents along the 3-mile stretch of Interstate 75. The system worked until December 11th, 1990. The Wayne Davis study was an important starting point for Doug Fees, but the Davis study was conducted 12 years earlier. Fees needed to know what caused the fog on December 11th, 1990.
The killer fogs that have occurred 6 prior times with 6 prior accidents, that's not a natural fog. It's, as the victims and the people that were in it will tell you, the visibility was absolutely zero. And they're not natural, they're super fogs is what they are.
Doug Fees heard about a scientist who was using computers to track weather conditions and pollutants. Was it possible that science could recreate the weather condition on the day of the accident? Attorney Doug Fees wanted to know if the thick, dense fog on the morning of the accident had been produced naturally or was caused by one or more of the local industries or some combination of both. To find out, he hired Dr. Alan Eschenroder, who teaches civil engineering at Harvard University. His area of expertise is risk management, and he also runs a consulting firm which specializes in air quality modeling.
This was kind of an ideal fit because the fog frequency issue and the accident frequency issues were statistical risk analysis, and the atmospheric modeling is something that I've been doing for over 30 years.
Eschenroder gathered weather information about the morning of the accident from the Knoxville and Chattanooga airports, as well as from 2 nuclear power plants, one only 18 miles from the scene. Weather records indicated that there were few, if any, clouds on the morning of the accident. Winds were light, and the temperature dropped rapidly the night before from a high of 60 degrees in the afternoon to almost freezing. This 30-degree drop in temperature could cause a weather phenomenon called an inversion. An inversion occurs when the temperature on the ground is cooler than the temperature in the atmosphere. This prevents air and moisture from dissipating into the atmosphere, pushing the moisture back towards the ground. Very early on the morning of the accident, a helicopter pilot flying over Interstate 75 noticed a mushroom-shaped cloud similar to this one over the Bowater paper mill smokestacks, 3 miles east of the accident site. Eschenroder believes this was visual confirmation of the inversion. Water vapor is produced naturally, coming from evaporation from lakes, streams, rivers, and ground moisture. Dr. Eschenroder calculated that the evaporation rate of the natural bodies of water in the area was only 392 gallons per day. This was barely enough to create even a light fog, let alone the dense, thick fog described by accident victims and rescue personnel. Eschenroder was convinced there had to be another source of water vapor which caused the thick fog. He noticed a series of ponds which straddled the interstate highway on 2 sides. These were wastewater treatment ponds which belonged to the Bowater paper plant. These ponds were used to clean the industrial wastewater from the paper mill. In 2 of the ponds, aerator fans would propel the water up into the air. Most of the water dropped back into the ponds. Some of it did not.
That's called drift. Drift droplets are things that drift away from the site of where they are formed. All the other droplets fall back to earth or fall back to the pond where they originate. So we had to do some original calculations in an engineering estimate fashion for emission of those droplets.
Eschenroder calculated that these wastewater treatment ponds added 10 million gallons of water vapor into the atmosphere in the 24 hours preceding the accident. Far more than the 392 gallons from the natural bodies of water.
I guess that was the only thing I knew to do.
Doug Fee's case was set for trial in 1994, more than 3 years after the accident. Bowater disagreed with the scientific calculations used in the Eschenroder study and hired its own scientific expert. Dr. George McVeal is a meteorologist from Denver. His study concluded that Bowater's contribution to the fog on the day of the accident was less than 1%.
Our conclusion was that the fog formed